The fluorescent lights of Boston Logan International Airport buzzed overhead as I sat alone at a small table in the food court, picking at a salad that cost 3 times what it should have. My flight to San Francisco had been delayed for the third time that day, pushing my departure well into the night. I checked my phone, 7:43 p.m. 5 more hours of this purgatory. I was exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that comes from more than just travel. The past year had been a series of disappointments and false starts. A relationship that ended badly. A job I'd taken only to discover the company was circling the drain. And the recent news that my childhood home was being sold. At 32, I felt adrift, heading to San Francisco, not because I had a plan, but because I needed something to change. As I stabbed at a cherry tomato, I looked up to survey the crowd of fellow travelers. All of us trapped in transition, existing in this strange liminal space. That's when I saw him. Or at least, I thought I did. A flash of a familiar profile, a certain way of moving through the crowd with shoulders slightly hunched. I blinked, and he was gone, swallowed by the sea of people rushing to their gates. Shook my head. It couldn't be him. Not here, not now. My mind was playing tricks, conjuring ghosts from my past when I was at my lowest. I returned to my sad airport salad, but the appetite I barely had was now completely gone. 20 minutes later, I was gathering my things, ready to find a quiet corner where I could read, or maybe even nap, when I heard it. A voice that sent electricity up my spine. Emma? Emma Fletcher? I froze, one hand on my carry-on handle, the other clutching my phone. Slowly, I turned around. There he was. Luke Mercer. My best friend from age 7 to 17. The boy who lived 3 houses down, who taught me to ride a bike and who I taught to bake cookies. The teenager who held me when my parents told me they were divorcing. The person I once knew better than anyone else in the world, until the day he and his family moved across the country without so much as a goodbye. Luke, I whispered, the name feeling rusty in my mouth. It had been 15 years since I'd spoken it aloud. He looked different, of course. The gangly teenager had filled out into a broad-shouldered man. His once shaggy hair was now cut short, flecked with the earliest hints of gray at the temples. But his eyes, those startling blue eyes, were exactly the same, crinkled at the corners as he smiled uncertainly at me. I can't believe it's you, he said, taking a hesitant step forward. I thought I was seeing things. I thought the same thing a few minutes ago, I admitted. I caught a glimpse of you but convinced myself I was imagining it. An awkward silence fell between us, 15 years of unspoken words creating a chasm. Neither of us seemed to know how to cross. Are you... He started. How have... I began simultaneously. We both stopped and laughed, the tension breaking slightly. My flight's delayed, I explained. I've been sitting here for hours. Mine too, he said. Heading to Chicago. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I join you? I nodded, and just like that, Luke Mercer was sitting across from me in an airport food court, as if the universe had decided to throw us together when we least expected it. So, he said, setting down his coffee cup. San Francisco? I glanced at my boarding pass sitting on the table. Just a guess? Or, are you psychic now? He grinned. The gate number on your boarding pass. I fly a lot for work. You learn the airport layouts. What do you do? I asked, realizing I knew absolutely nothing about the adult version of the person who had once been my entire world. I'm an environmental engineer, specializing in water systems. You? Digital marketing, I said. Or I was. I quit my job last month. His eyebrows rose. Big step. Seemed like the right time for a change. I hesitated. What brings you to Boston? Conference. I presented a paper on sustainable water reclamation projects. He smiled self-consciously. Not exactly thrilling dinner conversation. No, that sounds important. Good for you. I fidgeted with my water bottle. You always were the smart one. Luke scoffed. You beat me in every test except math and science. And even then, it was close. I couldn't help but smile at the memory of our competitive friendship. Remember when Mrs. Harrison had to separate us in 5th grade because we kept trying to peek at each other's test papers? Only because you wouldn't let me see your spelling answers, he shot back, laughing. And just like that, the ice was broken. We fell into conversation with surprising ease, filling in the broad strokes of the 15 years that had passed. Luke had gone to college in California, gotten his master's degree, and now worked for an engineering firm that sent him around the country consulting on environmental projects. He'd been married briefly in his 20s. Too young, wrong person, he explained, and was currently single. I told him about my journalism degree, my pivot to marketing, and my series of increasingly soul-crushing corporate jobs. I skipped over the details of my recent breakup with Daniel, saying only that my personal life was in transition. As we talked, I found myself studying his face, trying to reconcile the boy I had known with the man before me. There were new lines around his eyes, a small scar on his chin that hadn't been there before, but when he laughed, a deep, genuine sound, I could see the Luke I had known, the one who had once been as familiar to me as my own reflection. So why San Francisco? He asked after we'd covered the basics. Job opportunity? I hesitated. Not exactly. More like a fresh start, I guess. I took a sip of my water. My mom's selling our old house. After the divorce, she stayed there, but now she's moving in with her fiancé. I found myself unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Everything's changing. Nothing to keep me in Boston anymore. Luke was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry about your parents. I always liked your mom. She liked you too. I paused. She was pretty upset when you guys left so suddenly. The words hung in the air between us. This was it. The elephant in the room. The reason why two people who had once been inseparable had gone 15 years without speaking. Luke's expression clouded. Emma, about that... It's ancient history, I interrupted, suddenly afraid of what he might say. We were kids. No, I need to explain. He leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. I wanted to say goodbye. I begged my parents to let me, but things were complicated. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Complicated how? Luke ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that transported me back to countless afternoons studying in his family's kitchen, his mother bringing us snacks, his father's deep laugh echoing from the living room. My dad lost his job, he said quietly. Not just lost it, he was fired for, well, there were accusations of embezzlement. He wasn't guilty, it was eventually proven, but at the time, it was a huge scandal. He couldn't find work anywhere in New England. My uncle offered him a position in his company in Seattle, but he wanted us to leave quickly, before more rumors spread. I stared at him, stunned. I had no idea. No one did. My parents were humiliated. They swore me and my sister to secrecy. We weren't even allowed to tell our closest friends. His eyes met mine. Especially not our closest friends. But I would have understood, I protested. I would have kept your secret. I know that now, Luke said. But my parents they weren't thinking clearly. Everything happened so fast. Within a week of my dad losing his job, we were packed and gone. I didn't even get to finish the school year. You could have called. Written. Something, I said. Old hurt rising to the surface despite my best efforts to contain it. I tried, he said, surprising me. I called your house a week after we moved. Your dad answered and said you were at soccer practice. I left my number But you never called back. I frowned, trying to remember. I never got that message. Understanding dawned on Luke's face. It was right when your parents were starting to have problems, wasn't it? I nodded slowly. My parents' divorce had been ugly, with my father moving out abruptly not long after Luke's family left. In the chaos of that time, messages could easily have been forgotten or deliberately ignored. After that, Luke continued, I tried to find you online, but this was before social media was really a thing. By the time Facebook came around, I'd convinced myself you probably wouldn't want to hear from me anyway. I looked for you too, I admitted. But Luke Mercer is surprisingly common, and I had no idea where you'd moved to. We sat in silence for a moment, processing the absurdity of it all. How miscommunication and bad timing had kept us apart for 15 years. So, Luke said finally, San Francisco. Any plans once you get there? I shrugged. Find an apartment, look for work, figure out what I actually want to do with my life. That's a pretty big undertaking. Well, I figured at 32 it was now or never for a quarter-life crisis. Luke smiled. I think we're past the quarter mark, unfortunately. Speak for yourself. I plan to live to at least 128. He laughed, and I felt a warm glow of satisfaction at being able to make him laugh after all this time. Our conversation continued, moving from the past to the present, from the serious to the lighthearted. We discovered that we both still loved the same obscure indie band we'd obsessed over as teenagers, that we both hated cilantro with a passion, that we'd both developed a coffee addiction in college that showed no signs of abating. As we talked, the crowded airport around us seemed to fade away. The delays that had earlier filled me with frustration now seemed like a stroke of luck, a gift of time I hadn't known I needed. I'm sorry I never reached out, Luke said suddenly, when our conversation hit a natural lull, even after I got older and could have tried harder to find you. I think part of me was afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd moved on completely. That I'd be this awkward reminder of a past you'd rather forget. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Or worse, that you wouldn't remember me at all. Luke, I said, incredulous. You were my best friend for 10 years. How could I possibly forget you? People do, he said simply. Life moves on. I thought about the path my life had taken since Luke had disappeared from it. College, jobs, relationships, a whole adult existence that he knew nothing about. And yet, sitting across from him felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if we were picking up a conversation we'd paused just yesterday. Not everything moves on, I said quietly. Something changed in his expression then. A softening. A recognition. He reached across the table and after a brief hesitation, placed his hand over mine. His touch was warm, familiar in a way that made my chest ache with a feeling I couldn't name. Do you remember that summer before high school? He asked, when we decided we were going to save up and go to Europe after graduation. I smiled at the memory. We made that detailed budget based on absolutely no research whatsoever. Weren't we planning to see 7 countries in like 10 days? 8, actually. We were very ambitious and completely clueless about geography. But we were so sure we could do it. Luke's expression grew thoughtful. That's what I missed most, I think. Your absolute certainty that if we put our minds to something, we could make it happen. I'm not sure that certainty survived into adulthood, I admitted. No? He studied my face. Then why are you getting on a plane to San Francisco with no job and no plan? Sounds pretty daring to me. I hadn't thought of it that way. In my mind, the move had been born of desperation rather than courage. A leap taken because standing still had become unbearable. Maybe there's still a little of that 15-year-old left in me after all, I said. I'm glad, Luke replied. I always liked her. The simple sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, I was transported back to his parents' backyard, the two of us lying on a blanket looking up at the stars, making grand plans for the future. I had loved him then, with the pure, uncomplicated love of childhood that isn't concerned with definitions or boundaries. "Luke," I began, not sure what I was going to say, but feeling that something important was happening between us, something that required acknowledgement. Before I could continue, a voice came over the PA system. "Attention passengers on flight. 1457 to San Francisco. We will begin boarding in 30 minutes at gate C16. Reality crashed back in. I glanced at my watch and was shocked to see that 3 hours had passed since Luke had sat down at my table. "That's me," I said, feeling a sudden panic. After 15 years without Luke Mercer in my life, the prospect of saying goodbye again, after this brief reconnection, seemed unbearable. "Right," he said, withdrawing his hand from mine. "You should probably head to your gate." "Yeah." I started gathering my things, movements clumsy with reluctance. "Emma," Luke said as I stood up, "can I get your number? I don't want to lose touch again." I hesitated, pen poised over a napkin. "Where do you live now?" "San Jose," he said, and I froze. "San Jose? As in California? As in 30 minutes from San Francisco?" A slow smile spread across his face. "Did I not mention that?" "No," I said. "You absolutely did not mention that very relevant piece of information." Luke shrugged, trying and failing to look innocent. Must have slipped my mind. "For 3 hours of conversation, I was distracted," he said, his eyes holding mine. "It's not every day you run into the person you've missed for 15 years. My heart stuttered. "Smooth talker. Is it working?" I laughed, the tension that had been building breaking like a wave. "Give me your phone." He handed it over, and I entered my number, then called myself so I'd have his. As I handed the phone back, our fingers brushed, and I felt that same electric current I'd experienced when I first heard his voice. "You know," Luke said, "I've been thinking about taking some time off, showing a newcomer around the Bay Area." "Is that so?" I tried to keep my voice casual, but couldn't help the smile tugging at my lips. "Unless you'd rather explore on your own." I thought about what awaited me in San Francisco. An Airbnb booked for 2 weeks, a city full of strangers, and a future as blank as an empty page. And then I thought about Luke, this person who had once known me better than anyone, who through some miracle of timing and delayed flights had found his way back into my life. "I think," I said carefully, "that I could use a guide." Another announcement came over the PA system, this time for Luke's flight to Chicago. "That's you," I said. Luke didn't move. "I'm thinking of changing my plans." "What?" "I was only going to Chicago for meetings I could do virtually." His eyes never left mine. "What if I came to San Francisco instead, just for a few days, to catch up properly?" My heart was racing now. "That's crazy." "Is it?" he challenged. "Crazier than running into each other in an airport after 15 years? Crazier than discovering we're basically living in the same area now?" Put like that, it didn't seem crazy at all. It seemed like fate, or destiny, or whatever name you give to those rare moments when the universe seems to be nudging you toward a particular path. You'd really change your flight? Just like that? "For you," Luke said softly, "in a heartbeat." And in that moment, standing in the middle of a crowded airport food court, surrounded by strangers all rushing to be somewhere else, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. The exhilarating certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. "Okay," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Let's do it." Luke's face broke into a grin so bright it could have lit up the entire terminal. "Yeah?" "Yeah." I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Let's see where this goes." As we walked toward the ticketing counters, Luke's hand found mine, fingers intertwining as if they remembered the shape of each other from all those years ago. And maybe they did. Maybe some connections don't disappear with time and distance. They just wait for the right moment to be rediscovered. I don't know what will happen when we land in San Francisco. I don't know if this unexpected reunion is the beginning of something new or the closure of something old. But for the first time in a long time, I'm eager to find out. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary journeys begin in the most ordinary places, like eating alone at an airport until your childhood friend shows up. Have you ever experienced an unexpected reunion that changed everything? Life has this funny way of bringing people back when you least expect it, doesn't it? If this story touched you in any way, I'd love to hear about your own chance encounters in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through memory and possibility, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories that explore the beautiful complexity of human connections. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to share more unexpected tales with all of you wonderful people. Until next time, keep your eyes open. You never know who might walk back into your life when you're just sitting there, eating alone at the airport.